Hey guys, welcome back to Trust Me It's Worth It. I'm Emily.
And I'm Mike.
And this week we are looking at a TV show again, because you can never have enough of those.
Or two TV shows.
Or two TV shows, in fact. And I'm going to make Mike watch something that my older sisters got me into years ago, which is an American TV show, Supernatural.
Ooh, sorry, I was looking at the TV and I thought it was going to be something else. Supernatural, right. So because you chose Supernatural, you said it was like vampires and stuff. I thought I'd make you watch Castlevania, which is a Netflix animated show, adult animated show, which is very similar to Japanese anime, but technically not anime, as the weebs would know, because it's an American production. But it's based on the Castlevania video game series, which is about Dracula and his son Alucard, which is Dracula backwards, and it follows a vampire hunter. So it's sort of similar realm. So I thought I'd take you on again. I like doing this, like pitting something similar against what you propose.
Yeah, I mean, they're quite similar. Supernatural is, I suppose, what it is in the title. It is werewolves, it's vampires, there's demons. It is just very supernatural. It's, yeah.
Wait, what is it then? Is it like a live action?
Yeah, so it's live action. It is about two brothers called Sam and Dean who are very attractive. That's important to know.
Classic.
And admittedly, it's very long. It's 15 seasons long. There's like 314 episodes. It's big. But it's about those two who go...
314? I
Yeah.
feel like I'm going to have the same reason I'm never watching Naruto.
I've watched more or less all of it.
The payoff is fantastic on episode 700. Trust me about that. Just bear with it for the first 400 episodes. Maybe skim through those, but...
Yeah, it's about two brothers who go around fighting monsters and demons, and they do a bit of a backstory from the fact that their mother died when they were younger, and they're trying to hunt down the demon that killed her, and then their father goes missing, and they try and find him, and they save people along the way. And it's actually, considering I don't like horror, the first season is very creepy. And I remember watching one where they're in an asylum, and I honestly had to pause it and go upstairs and get my brother to come and watch it with me, because I was too scared, but not too scared enough that I wanted to stop watching it. So I was like, Tom, you must sit with me while I watch this, please.
It sounds like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. What you're pitching sounds
Admittedly,
just
having
like
not seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it possibly is like that, but it is quite gory, it is quite creepy.
Should have got you to watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Also, really good. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Is it quite campy? I don't know, something about that pitch makes me think it sounds quite...
I think it starts off really serious, and then later on they have quite a few special episodes. Like they have a musical episode. They have one where they get sucked into the TV and they ended up joining Scooby-Doo and the gang.
Oh my God.
And there's a beautiful scene where Dean, who is a bit of a comedian, wants to do the thing where you get a massive sandwich and try and shove it in your mouth, and he's like, Sam, look what I can do, and his brother's just looking at him like, you're a moron.
Wait, so is it animated at that point?
In that one it's animated.
This programme sounds utterly mad.
But it's great.
So is it like every episode's a little story in of itself, just like a little, like a Doctor Who type thing, where each episode's
No, not quite.
No.
See, they do go to different places, but in the later seasons they end up having like this thing called a bunker, and you learn a lot. Like there's demons, there's angels, they're at war with each other.
And Nephilim, let me guess.
There's a lot of, actually, which I think you'll like, there is a lot of like mythology in a lot of it. And they
like
do
Judeo-Christian mythology.
Yeah, and they have like purgatory, which you see. And actually, it really helped me when I was originally watching it when I was in school, because we were in RE, and they were like, can anyone tell me who Lucifer is? And I was like, yes, I can, because he's in Supernatural.
Yeah, but your version doesn't sound very accurate.
And my teacher was like, Emily, how do you know this? And I was like, I watch a lot of TV. So there's like Crowley, who's like the king of hell. You've got Lucifer in there. And it's just
Wait,
very
Crowley,
cool.
the king of hell? Is that why I didn't... Is this a true mythology thing? Like, what's the Good Omens? Isn't he called Crowley?
Yeah, he is, yeah.
Crowley,
Crowley is a demon of hell.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you learn a lot about...
I'm not sure if that's
everything.
in the Bible, though. I feel like that's...
I'm not saying it is in the Bible, I'm just saying it's a really good storyline. So yeah, I think you'll enjoy it.
Okay.
I mean, you'll probably only get to watch one episode, because I think they are about an hour, 45 minutes long. But I think you enjoy it because I know you like... Well, I suppose it's fantasy kind of in a way.
Yeah, that is
You like
fantasy.
that mythical stuff. And you quite like big TV shows, like things like this, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I wanted you to watch Castlevania as well is partly because what you're pitching, what you're talking about, sounds quite similar to Castlevania, but Castlevania is more serious than that.
Okay.
But I feel like people don't take it seriously just because it's animated, which I think is very unfair, because I think you can do a lot with animation that you sometimes can't do in live action.
Okay, so tell me about Castlevania. What is it you like about
So-
it? Is it a long series?
No, it's literally only 2 seasons out at the moment, and the
Okay.
first season is only 4 episodes, and they're only 20 minutes each, so it's
Oh,
really
sweet,
short. There's
yeah.
not much to it
I could
yet.
literally finish the first episode more or less in an hour.
You finished season 1 probably almost, yeah. You watched at least the first 3 episodes. Yeah, but it's based on, I believe, the third Castlevania video game, which I've never played any of the Castlevania games, but they're very famous in the video game community. It sort of spawned a genre. That and the Metroid games, Metroid, Castlevania, they make Metroidvania, which is a whole genre in of itself.
Sounds interesting.
So they're pretty famous and well-known games, but I've never actually played any of them. So this was my first introduction to them, and you really don't need to care about the games. I feel like all
good.
of that backstory and lore and, whatever somebody who has played the games might be getting out of it. I've not played them, and I love it. I think really the reason it's so good, though, is just the production value so high. They've got brilliant actors in it. Richard Armitage plays Trevor Belmont.
Richard Armitage. I do like him.
Yeah, very good voice acting as well. Sometimes I get a bit worried when I hit that famous actors are voice acting, because I think they're 2 different skills, but he's phenomenal in it. And I think the reason it's so impressive is because it's trying to be Japanese anime, so it's really stylistically looks like anime,
Yeah.
but it's an American production, so it has a lot of the like the dub, because it's not Japanese originally, the original dubbing is in English, and so the voice acting is actually good. It's not just something that they've got to dub over the Japanese. And I feel like this is always a thing with Japanese anime and Western ideas of storytelling don't always mesh, because Japanese manga and anime are often like very long serialized
Yeah.
shows, and they struggle to do proper like 3-act structures, and sometimes they need like sort of pinning down into a more fundamental core idea. Like sometimes they'll have a really, really strong premise. Like Sword Art Online is a great example of an anime with a really strong premise where people get sucked into a video game and stuck there, but then they don't know where to go with it. And I think Castlevania is a great example of, if it was made in Japan, I don't think it would be quite as good.
Yeah.
But a lot of the production team were apparently Japanese animators, so the animation's up to quality.
Yeah.
It's literally best of both worlds. It's got Western storytelling, Japanese animation.
I was about to say, I was worried when you told me it was an anime, because I know that a lot of the anime we've watched together in the past is
Not
very...
anime.
Not anime. Is very long, and it does feel like it can take forever to get to a point. So even if it's not anime, though the Japanese people were anime...
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
fine.
this is like a technicality. Of
So
the
what
difference
is the plot, if you will? What's the storyline?
Season 1 is pretty much the story of how Dracula comes to be at the start of season 2, if that makes sense. So it's about Dracula being evil and sort of having a... So he meets a woman who he falls in love with, and then she gets burnt as a witch. I'm kind of spoiling a bit here, but I think it doesn't really matter too much.
Okay.
And then you see Dracula go mad and try and kill everyone.
Classic
in
Dracula, really.
Wallachia, I think is the country they're in, which is was historically a real place in Romania. So I guess where Transylvania probably is, right? Dracula, vampire mythology comes from that area of the world, Eastern Europe. So it feels quite a sort of historical piece. It's like historical fantasy, and you really sympathise with Dracula in the start.
Okay.
It's you get to see the story from different perspectives. So you see the story a bit from Dracula's perspective, and a bit from Trevor Belmont, who's a vampire hunter from a famous family of vampire hunters.
Cool.
And then season 2 is sort of season 1 feels very much like setting up to the start of season 2, where like the gang gets together. So
okay.
Trevor meets Alucard, Dracula's son,
Yeah.
and the character who's a witch, basically. And it feels like I've not played the video games, but I'm guessing they're playable characters in the game. And it feels very much like you're about to start an RPG. And it's getting to the point of them going to face Dracula. And then season 2 is more about facing Dracula and Dracula's minions and the inner politicking of what goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah. Okay, this does sound somewhat relatable actually to Supernatural, because that is very much... I mean, season 1 is not the same in the fact that it's laying the way for season 2, but it is very much... Season 1 is meeting the team getting together, and they are fighting an end goal. It's not a vampire, it's a demon.
Yeah,
but potato.
Yeah, exactly. You can swap them out.
I think, to be fair, actually, you'll enjoy, weirdly enough, the logistics of Supernatural. If I
Right.
could just dive back there a second. Just because It's more in the later seasons, but I think it's important. So there are angels and demons. Demons can just possess you; they can just go into you and take control of your body.
Right.
Angels can't. You have to give them permission, and at any point you can cast them out.
Are angels and demons in this world like physical beings? Do they look like people?
No, so they have to physically to be able to
Okay.
walk among the earth. They have to physically take the form of a human,
Okay.
and that human is still trapped inside of them.
Ugh.
So when they leave, the human comes back
Right.
out. So if obviously they take over them long enough, and if they get like killed or whatever, and still retake that body, the human inside them
Yeah, yeah.
dies. So yeah, but there's a lot of when angels are not in heaven, occasionally later when lightning strikes, you can see their big wings, and they're actually meant to be massive beings.
Okay, so there's a lot of background lore, I take.
Yeah, which I think, to be fair, you'll enjoy, because I know you love a bit of lore.
Yeah, if I get into it, yeah, absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, are you ready to try these? Shall we?
Yeah, I'm just going to preface this by saying that this is very much an adult show, Castlevania.
Yes.
Because it's animated doesn't mean it's a kid's show, and it's quite violent, and that's the only thing. I think you'll really like the story, and I think you'll like the characters, but there's a lot of violence in it, so I think you might be a little bit.
I
like,
thought you were
"Ugh."
giving a trigger warning to our viewers, then going, "Children, please don't watch."
No,
You're
I'm
actually
telling
giving
you.
it to me.
Giving it to you. 100%.
Oh, good. Good to know. So yeah, let's start, guys, with this week, which is Supernatural versus.
Castlevania.
Hey guys, welcome back. We have just finished watching both Castlevania and Supernatural, and I'm going to go first with watching Castlevania. I feel like we both managed to, I'm not sure if we did this on purpose, but managed to pick kind of horror related TV shows this week.
Well, I purposefully well, when you said you were doing Supernatural, I'd wanted to make you watch Castlevania anyway, so I thought this is a perfect example to choose something a bit in the same genre.
They do feel quite similar, I feel. So, Castlevania, I watched the first 2.5 episodes ish, and a lot happens in that time.
Yeah, it's very condensed.
It's
isn't
very
it?
condensed. I feel like there's no time where it's dead air, which is kind of nice. It starts off with this woman going to Dracula's castle because she wants to learn science. And I immediately really enjoyed that because Dracula's castle has got loads of machinery. It's really geary. It's really kind of like grimy with its electricity and stuff. So it really sets the mood well for me, where I'm like, ooh.
So it's set in the 15th century in Wallachia. I think we already said that, but
Yeah.
it's like sort of a lot of Gothic architecture and like old cathedrals. But then Dracula, there's this like mix of science and magic, isn't there? Like Dracula's castle
Yeah.
has, and you'll see later, he says that it moves and it can
does,
fly
yeah.
and it can actually move, but it's like driven by machinery, and you're like, you don't really know what extent is that is just technology that we could actually have, or if it's magic because he's a vampire.
Yeah, I really enjoyed one, as you said, the kind of mix of, I suppose, eras, in that you have all this kind of like science and electricity, but then it's also very, 15th century, and everyone has their little houses and stuff. I thought it was really, yeah,
They're little mud huts.
the little
yeah.
houses. I was like, is it a mud hut? Not quite. They're probably in the
No, they're
Stone
just-
Age.
Yeah, no, they're the way ahead of the
Yeah,
Stone
so
Age.
Dracula takes a liking to this woman and they end up getting married. And then the next scene cuts really quickly to her being burnt at the stake for being a witch. And he's not there because she's convinced him to travel like man, as he puts it, around the world. So he's not there. So he comes back and wreaks vengeance and says, I give you 1 year to make peace with your God, and then I'm coming. Which is really interesting. I quite like that, the whole, oh, they've got a year. What were they doing this year? Turns out, nothing.
Well, I think it's interesting the way it frames Dracula as the good guy, and you totally sympathise with
Oh,
him.
yeah, 100%.
The church are so there's a lot of critique of that period's Christianity, I suppose, and it reminds me a lot of Berserk, which is one of my favourite manga series,
Yeah.
and a very famous manga and anime, which has a sort of similar view of the church in the Middle Ages of being oppressive, squashing technology and science, and repressing women, especially, I suppose. And I think this does
Yeah,
like a
stupid church.
well, exactly. It does like a double effect of how smug that bishop is, and he's set up really nicely as a villain, I think.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I admittedly, when I was making notes, a lot of the stuff I wrote down was just very graphic, because you see her body burn and then it like falls apart. Blood is raining from the sky.
I noted this. So in both Supernatural and Castlevania, you have the same trope of where someone has blood drip on their hand, and I was like, how perfect!
How
How do we
perfect.
manage to
Such
both
a,
together?
it is a creepy thing though, because when you have a close up of a hand and blood drips, you're just like, oh god, don't look up. Please, just don't look
But
up.
it's such a well-used trope. We all know sort of
Yeah,
what's
the
coming.
scenes in it are so gory and graphic, but admittedly, I kind of like it. Like, it slightly repulses me, but then I'm also like, I kind of feel like I need it
Well, a
for the
lot of it feels
series.
justified. I think
Yeah.
they do a good job of when there is gore, you actually kind of sympathize with the monsters, or like
Really
you
do.
don't feel too guilty about all these people getting murdered because they did all stand around watching while she got burnt to death,
Yeah,
while his wife got burnt to
it
death.
did kind of make me go when he was just like, well, none of them could have stood up. Some of them could have stood up and said no. In the back of my head, I was like, what would I have done if I was here? I was like, if I just wasn't there, does that make it
Oh,
okay?
I 100% would have been a peasant just standing there. Like, what would I have done? Unless,
Literally, I was like, I'd have just been stood there with my little peasant ways, like,
yeah.
ah,
I mean,
well,
even they make a point of showing that the mayor sort of tries to defend her a bit and is like, I ought to know some of the chemical sciences because
yeah. And he's
they're
like, just
burning.
studying though, just studying. Wouldn't practice it. Goodness no.
They show how powerful the church is and how influential they are in twisting what people say and oppressing science because they do a cool. Well, I think they do quite a cool thing of. Do you agree? Where they show that she's just basically becoming a doctor and an effective
Yes, that's what she
doctor,
wants to
and
be.
Dracula
Yeah.
gives her the tools to be a more modern doctor, and it's not actually magic, but she is perceived as a witch, and you can sort of understand why people would perceive her as a witch. She's doing all this stuff that she probably shouldn't be able to do, and has all these lotions and potions, and then, I mean, to be fair, when she dies, a big demon comes
Comes
in her.
out,
Yeah,
yeah.
so you can understand
I
why
did
people would
see that
say,
moment and go, oh, you're just playing right into their hands right now.
yeah.
Of going, oh, yes, it is the devil.
But it paints a cool picture, I think, of. I like these sort of pieces where they paint religion as. I guess in a way they're like the truth.
Oh, it
They're the
felt just
ultimate media
so.
empire of their era, right? They
Yeah.
control what people
It
think.
just felt so like hypocritical to me that the church is always like, oh yes, God will save us. No, you can't help them with your potions. That is witchcraft. Burn her. It's like, okay, so you don't want people to live. That no, that's
Well,
cool.
I think this show frames the church specifically.
Yeah, and this is just evil. Evil
Yeah,
church,
and
bad
more.
men.
Yeah, exactly. That it's corrupt at this point. It's
Yeah.
run by purely like greedy men. I mean, when they show, is it the Pope or the Archbishop, whoever, it's the fat guy.
Oh my gosh, we've got like three chins.
And I think it's perfect how easy it is to portray someone as lazy, and slothful and greedy, and all of these sins that the church supposedly prohibits by just showing that he's getting carried in a chair. He's probably like he looks like he's riddled with gout. He's got the long gnarled fingers that Dracula has.
Yeah,
There's like
it's
quite
just
clever
gross.
parallels, I think.
Yeah, I just really enjoyed it. As I say, the gore really adds to it.
So you weren't spooked by it?
Admittedly, no, like it was a bit creepy. Like I think weirdly, the one scene that got me the most, which is
Was it the eye?
no.
Okay.
So the one scene that got me the most, which is not even a big scene, you probably wouldn't even notice it if you were looking at your phone at that moment. Is but when I don't know what these are called, the weird devilly flying
They're just
monkey
like,
things,
yeah, demon gargoyles.
demon gargoyles, let's call them. Are outside the village, and the
Hmm.
main character's looking at them. One of them just has a baby in his mouth.
Oh yeah.
For like a split second, you see it, and I was just like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, they
like
do.
that really creeped me out. Of everything, you're just like, "Oh no."
I feel like, again, and I hadn't really noticed this on my first watch, but it does look like, I might be wrong, that it's been inspired by works like Berserk, which has a lot of that, where innocent people are shown just to be mauled and trampled by forces outside of their control.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
you know, like, there's another scene where there's a child just, like, quivering in a corner, and he's holding a knife, and his parents are all dead.
Yeah.
And you have a sudden realization of, even though you're sympathizing with Dracula, that these people are all nasty, they need to die. But also there are lots of people swept up in it that are totally innocent.
Yeah, like
And
every
all
day
of
they're like
these-
taking heads off sticks and guts off walls, and I'm just like, oh my gosh.
all the machinations of the church, this powerful institution, versus Dracula and his forces, literally the forces of hell. Regular people are the ones actually swept up in all the carnage.
Yeah, it was very gripping from the beginning. I found it very interesting. I love it when we first meet the main character, Belmont.
Do you remember his first name?
Trevor?
Yeah, I just think it's funny.
Trevor.
I've got an uncle called Trevor, and I think it's quite a funny name, but I think it's probably
Trevor
like
Belmont.
Treyfor, right? Like
Yeah.
it's an old name.
Because he's like drunk in a pub and they're like cursing his family, and you can see him just stood there like, oh, great.
Did you like Richard Armitage's performance?
Oh, yeah, I loved Richard Armitage. He's a great character. I've seen him in that kind of, I suppose, somewhat broody character before, such as in The Hobbit. He's very much the kind of elderly, quiet-ish, broody guy. But I enjoy him in this, and I think because of some of his light comedy, I like the sass of the main character.
Yeah,
Because he has
it's quite funny.
a great level of sass where you can see he's just done this for so long. Like, fighting monsters is ingrained into his family that he's just like, I just don't care anymore.
He's a very naturally cool character, I think, because he's so aloof and so... yeah, he does that really cool... It makes somebody instantly likable, I think, when you know they don't want to care, but something about their personality makes them care. So he really doesn't want to get involved with anything, and he's just a guy trying to get on with his
he
life.
wants breakfast, wants a drink, wants to get drunk, and then move on.
And then he ends up like saving someone's life because there's this group of travelling people called speakers.
Yeah, I did put what speakers. What exactly are?
So I think you learn a
speakers?
bit more about speakers. I don't know exactly, but I think they're basically like I don't know if this was a real thing that happened. They're basically walking historians. They go around. They've got this culture of spreading history and recording it, not by writing it down, but by talking about it.
Okay.
And I think they also know a bit of magic. So the girl that he rescues, she sort of becomes a main character. She knows a bit of magic. She's like the wizard in the group, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that. Like, I really, as I say, I really enjoy the main character because, as you say, he doesn't want to care, but a bit of him does, and a bit of him is just like, I've got to help. Because no one else is going to.
Yeah.
I must.
I keep bringing up Blake Schneider's Save the Cat because people, my friends have told me that's the best script writing book, and I'd have to agree. And Trevor Belmont immediately does the Save the Cat thing where he saves this guy's about to be attacked by the church, and so we're again doubling down on the clergy are evil, and he's about to be killed by them. And Trevor's like, I don't want to get involved, but then does and saves his life.
I love the fact that when he does it, he's like, oh, I'm a bit rusty. Like, it's such sass in the fact that, oh, yeah, I've not done this in a while. So he uses his whip, very Indiana Jones, to whip the knife out the guy's hand while also severing off his finger.
And I could never tell if he meant to do that.
No,
Because
exactly.
he says, like, oops, didn't mean to do that. I'm like, did he not mean to do that, or is he just being sassy?
I was the same. I assumed he didn't mean to do that. And he was just like, it's been a while, I've not used the whip. Still getting there, you know?
Yeah. And also the fact that he gets beaten up in the very first scene we see him. He doesn't win the first fight you see him. He's in a bar fight.
Yeah.
And he does a very good job of holding his own, but he also ultimately gets the snot kicked out of him.
Yeah, he does, yeah.
And so I think that, again, adds to him being an endearing character. I'm quite surprised, though, how much... You sound very positive about it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it's because, as well, actually, I wrote this down, there is it's very similar to Supernatural in the fact that Belmont, his, like, family have come from a family of, like, monster hunters, if you will, fighting monsters, and that is what the Winchester family is as well. They come from very much fighting monsters, saving people, hunting things... place, and
I don't know if this comes from some like real world story. If the supposedly in history there was some families, I don't know, maybe.
Because obviously the Belmont family has been like crucified, they've been cast aside. He literally says like, "Oh, I'm not allowed in the church," and they're like, "We'll make an exception." And he's like, "Look, if I set on fire when I step through that church, it's your fault."
Yeah, I can't remember exactly all bad, but I think the premise is that Trevor Belmont is from this very wealthy family, the Belmonts, who are sort of landed gentry, I suppose, of the period, but then because they go off and hunt vampires, they presumably put themselves into disrepute. And I'm not sure if it's because they failed at hunting them or because just by virtue of the fact that they were participating in essentially like monster hunting, demon slaying and vampire hunting, that meant they were ostracised.
Yeah, I think my issue with now is that I'm very conflicted as to who I feel sorry for, because I still feel sorry for Dracula because he's essentially mourning the loss of his wife, the only human he ever loved. But also, I love Belmont because he is, as you say, he saved the cat, he's the hero, and he's just a cool guy, instantly likeable. So that puts me in a very awkward position of like, who is it I root for?
Well, I think that's the best villains, right? You know, like Thanos in Avengers, he's a relatable villain. You ultimately think what he's doing is wrong, and I think Dracula's the same. He's taking his vengeance out on too great a scale. Like he's destroying a whole country because of the acts of a small group of people, even if those people
I mean, the best villain is obviously Magneto from X-Men.
Well, yeah, of course.
He is the most. When you said most relatable, I assumed you were going to go straight for Magneto because he is very relatable as a character.
Yeah, Magneto's the best, but we can. I'm going to make you watch some of the early X-Men films.
Okay, we'll get into that another time. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
While we're on Magneto, actually, the way he flies is the best thing. If anyone just wants to look up a video of Ian McKellen flying as Magneto, the sassy arms to the side.
The arms to the side.
Very
He's literally
powerful.
just like giving everyone a what's up.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the kind of science. It does leave me with a lot of questions, which I think is always good. And I am 2.5 episodes in now, and so yeah, I'm very much like, what does happen next?
So season 1 is only 4 episodes, and I feel like it's very much a taster.
Yeah.
And it just sort of sets the scene for what's to come. But I remember really being blown away with how good the animation is, how good the voice acting is, the production quality.
Oh yeah, I did forget at times it was animation because I was like, it is so.
It's not necessarily like realistic looking.
No, it's just, as I say, it's very graphic and it really is top quality.
It's just it doesn't have the slowness that some, especially like older Japanese anime, can have, where you have one frame and a character talking for a long time. It's very dynamic, it's very fast.
Yeah.
It looks like it's very high production, and it's all 2D, so it doesn't have that horrible clunkiness of 3D animation.
Yeah.
So it does look really nice. And yeah, I think the voice acting in it is
I think
really
the voice acting
good.
is what really makes it. As I say, Richard Armitage, great actor in general. I've loved him in many things. And his voice, weirdly enough, I can just about tell it's him, but he's very good at changing his voice in that way where I'm like, I can tell it's you, but only because I know it's you, which I think is actually a very good thing.
Yeah, I recognised the voice but couldn't have said who it was until
I saw the name on screen and I was like, oh, of course it's Richard Armitage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he is really... I'm quite surprised because I thought you might approach this with like, I don't care what's going on, or it's horrid and gory and just... I don't know. I thought
we seem to have gone into a horror week. Maybe I'm just opening up to horror for now.
That's good. I mean, it's not...
Yeah.
I wouldn't describe it as over horror.
No.
It's it's more of just an action fantasy show.
Yeah, it's definitely not for children though. Obviously.
Yeah, I will say that season 2 is quite different, and I have sort of not mixed feelings about season 2. Okay. I like season 2, but it takes a bit of a different direction, and it slows down a lot more, I think. So season 1 is very fast, isn't it? Season 2's a bit slower, and it takes different perspectives. You see the perspective of like Dracula's generals, and there's a bit more sort of politicking around. So it's interesting. But I'm hoping you're going to say you're going to keep watching it, but I guess we'll talk about that later.
So let's move on to Supernatural, because we watched that one second, so you've literally just finished watching that, and we watched one episode, and then I gave you an extra 15 minutes just to make it up to an even hour.
Yeah.
You seem to be very into it. You were making a lot of comments. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, do you know what? It's very much like, Buffy, sort of, a lot of shows. I mean, I can't tell, because when did this show come out?
Oh, so yeah, the original, it started in 2005, and I think it's literally finished this year.
So it's done now?
Yeah, they officially finished.
Oh, wow, okay.
It was 15 seasons, I think, 14-year run.
15 seasons, oh my god. I really do want to know how they stretch it out that far, because I've got some questions about what the dad's doing, etc. But I kind of...
Yeah, so tell me...
my initial...
Did it grip you at the beginning?
I have to admit, I think the opening is proper old school horror as well. I mean, you sort of know everything's coming, but the music's quite tense. It's got real jump scares. It's got there's a lot of tension that builds up. There's a lot of suspense.
Yeah, just for you guys that have not watched the first episode, like the first moment, and I don't feel like I'm spoiling anything here, is she hears her baby crying. She goes in. Her husband's not asleep next to her, so she goes into the doorway of the nursery, calls out her husband's name, and he just goes shh. So she's like, oh, it's okay. Husband's looking after him. And then as she's walking along the landing, she hears the TV on downstairs, walks downstairs and sees her husband asleep on the sofa. Obviously, panic ensues.
So she knows the person standing over her baby's
a stranger.
cot is someone
Which
else.
Is every parent's nightmare. Come on.
Yeah, and it is built up. It's built up in a way as well where we as the audience are like pretty sure it's not him as well, because there are a lot of telltale signs. But then you can also kind of understand. You're screaming at her going, that's not your husband. But you also go, I can kind of get if you woke up in the middle of the night, you're sleep deprived, you've got a young baby. He says, shh, okay,
your husband's not next to you. You're like, 1 and 1 make 2 there.
Yeah, you can understand why she would do that. And then the bit where we have the blood dripping, so the husband then hears his wife scream and he goes up, and then the baby's fine, but then blood drips on his hand, and he looks up, and his wife is stuck to the ceiling, like Exorcist style, I guess. Her stomach's slit, and then she gets
flames,
engulfed in
yeah.
flames. So it's a really cool opening, and it does make you go like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" But I think there are a lot of things that made me laugh about the show. It's very of its time, like early noughties.
Oh, yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
like the style, the fashion. My God, what were people thinking? Like, why is everything oversized? Why are everyone's clothes too big for them? I mean, I'm sure people will look back at things that are in fashion today.
You are literally wearing a varsity jacket right now.
I know,
right?
exactly. People will think, well, I'm not the height of fashion. But, you know, I can't believe how dumb some of the stuff looks. I mean, their haircuts, I think, have kind of survived the test of time. But they also have a lot of, a lot of the women in it are just like, oh, hey, we're attractive women who only talk about the male characters. And I never thought I'd be this, defending that, not or opposing that position rather, but it is somewhat transparent in this that
Yeah.
a lot of the women are just like, hey, that's a hot woman. Like, I am token hot woman.
So, how did you find the first episode? Because it's
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was it was like a fun Buffy the Vampire-esque episode. You know, the characters get dragged into their dad. Their dad wants to hunt down the demon that killed their mum, and it's 22 years later. They're grown
Yeah.
up. I think overall the story is really fun, right? It's them tracking down this woman in white. So it's a ghost story. She's killing men that are unfaithful. And it's got all the standard beats. I think it goes along nicely, and there's enough intrigue that you're like, oh, is this what's going on? Oh, is that what's going on? Yeah. The thing I want to criticize though is I've written here, this is what we're doing. Hurdy-gurdy-gurdy. Brackets bad writing.
I did see that in the first one.
So I understand the difficulty of this. They want to get across aspects of the characters' motivations, who they are, but there's so many bits where it's just like, oh, hi Sam, you're really smart. You're a really smart guy, aren't you, Sam? And then someone else is like, yes, he got a very high score on his test. Wasn't that a hard test that he did? Well, only an intelligent person would do very hard tests. Sam, you must be an intelligent person. So they had a bit of that.
Yeah.
And then they also had like, one person says like, I have conflict with my family, and then later on, he explains the conflict with his family. It's like, Dad said not to come home if I do this. It's very, what's the word? They do a lot of, I can't think of the word now.
I feel like it can be quite on the nose. I feel like the reason they do that is just because they want to get out
Exposition.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's very expository. There's a lot of expository dialogue that I think could have and should have been streamlined into it in a more subtle way, and maybe even could have held off till the second or third episode.
Maybe.
Because all of this stuff about who they are, we'll learn that. You don't have to dump it on us so heavy-handedly. But then I can't tell if I'm being a bit harsh on the show, because if it's a 2005 show, I feel like I've seen lots of programs like this. And I don't know if the programs I've seen are kind of more ripping off Supernatural, or if Supernatural's ripping them off. I guess
get
Buffy's older than Supernatural.
Yeah.
But, you see my point, I guess, don't you?
Oh, 100%.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have... there were things that I was nitpicking about, like, the main character, Sam. He's really smart. Everyone's going on about how smart he is. And then it turns out the dad's like, you shouldn't be going to college. Or his brother, I'm like, how, if they didn't value education, how did he possibly become this genius? He's like handsome genius, sporty, hunter of monsters. Like, he's the perfect man. What happened here? How did this happen?
Well, I think you find out in later ones that part of being a hunter is research, and is because they even
Right.
he's very good with computers, because part of when his dad was training them to be hunters, which was just like this thing, obviously they're amazing fighters because needed, and there's a lot of research that is involved in it, and clearly Sam had more of an aptitude for that than Dean did. I feel like if we were that hunter duo, you would definitely be the computer guy, and I'd be the person running in with the machete.
Yeah. With the machete.
So I think you kind of see that side of it maybe a bit later on.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Do you know what? It was a fun episode as well. The premise revolved around this woman in white monster that it's not exactly clear, but so her husband had an affair or something, and this drove her to go insane and drown her kids.
Yeah.
And then she went and killed herself, and now she haunts this bridge and abducts men and kills them
Yeah.
if they're unfaithful. And she, by unfaithful, they mean try and get with her, or don't even try and get with her. She's pretty aggressive.
She's very aggressive because she says to Sam, "Take me home," and he's like, "No," and she just makes him drive
yeah,
her
actually,
home.
she sexually assaults him pretty.
Pretty hard there.
And also when she does the Kalimar,
Oh my gosh, yeah, she
is it
literally.
Temple of Doom?
Yeah, she puts her hand just into his chest to try and rip his heart out.
Yeah, that's a fun game to just go to your friend Kalimar.
Oh, good.
Rip their heart out. But yeah, I thought it was good fun. There were certain bits in it that I just thought were like cheesy and funny. Like the guy who picks we see the first victim of the woman in white,
Yeah.
where he's driving along and he's talking to his girlfriend, and then he sees this girl on the side of the road in a tattered wedding dress, it looks like, and he hangs up and he pulls over and just she's behaving very strangely. She's like, "Take me home," and he's like, "Yeah, sure, get in, big tits." Like that's literally what he does. And,
Yeah.
And then he drives her back to this house where she says she lives. They've barely spoken a word. He's just staring at her boobs.
He really is.
And he then takes her to this house. She then disappears. He gets out his car after she spookily disappeared.
Yeah.
And he's like, looking around for her. And he almost goes into the abandoned spooky house that she's like, "Take me to my house." There are so many red flags here. So many
Clearly
red
not for
flags.
him because he's a moron.
How horny
But-
is this man? Can I just ask this question? Nobody
But
should ever be in this state.
Can we also please, like, it's clearly very old day. Like, he's got his flip phone. You can tell by the style, you know, as I
that
say,
mean-
it's
Do you
2005.
think people in 2005 were more sexually aggressive? Is that what
No,
you're saying?
I'm just saying that I think, you know, people may have got a bit smarter now. I don't know. Clearly he's a bit...
I've got smarter.
Clearly
The
he's
last
a bit
14
of a
years
moron.
have been very transformative for the human
they
race.
have,
So
I mean, clearly he's a bit of a moron.
yeah,
And that's his own fault.
it was such strange behaviour, but okay, fine, it's funny.
I feel like the fact you're having to like nitpick little things mean that overall you enjoyed it because we watched obviously 15 minutes of the second episode, which I'm really hoping you go back and rewatch because I want to watch it.
Yeah, so far, yeah, I've been having fun. It's quite violent, and I'm surprised that you liked it because it's spookier than a lot of things that you've been like, "No, I won't watch." It's much spookier.
Yeah, so I originally started watching this because my older sisters, Sally and Paula, had started watching it. And then I can't remember how old I was. And they were like, "Oh, we think you're old enough to watch this now because we're obsessed with it and we need you to be obsessed with it." And so one of my friends gave me the box set of season 1 to 3. And I think I watched them all with like my mum in the TV in the kitchen. And as I say, in season 1, there is one where they visit an abandoned asylum and my parents were out and my brother was upstairs and I made him come and sit with me because it's very spooky. I actually think the episodes get a bit less spooky because it's eventually more about character-driven development rather than the scary monster that they're going to see. But I don't think that hinders it in any way. Because I think by that point you're very much invested in these characters and their lives.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea that it's almost like Primeval or something like that, where every episode is like taking on a different monster, like Monster of the Week.
Yeah.
You know, there's something they have to defeat, and we learn a bit about them. Then they're also just in the first 2 episodes anyway. I'm hoping they meet up with the dad soon.
Yeah.
They're trying to find out their dad's gone missing, and that's how they ended up looking for this woman in white because he went missing looking for her and trying to deal with her. And then he sends them on. Well, they find a code in his journal that sends them on to the next monster. And I'm hoping this breadcrumb does end fairly soon because if it gets dragged on for too long, I think that will be a tiresome gimmick.
Yeah,
if you see what I mean.
I don't think it's a too long thing at all. The season 1, like, somewhat finale arc is very interesting, and you do meet the demon that was in Sam's room.
Oh, that's cool.
And obviously, at the end of season 1, Sam's girlfriend has the same fate as Sam's mum.
Oh, in episode 1, you mean?
In
Yeah,
episode 1, sorry,
season
just
1,
to backtrack, sorry, in episode 1, which is what makes him skip out on his, like, Stanford Law interview that could set him up for the rest of
Because
his
he's a
life.
really smart guy, because he did well on tests.
He,
Yeah, that's really sad, actually. That really emotionally resonates, because you've only seen this girl a few times, but she just immediately comes across as such a nice person because she just cares about him.
Yep.
I mean, again, it falls into the trap of, like, there are no female characters talking about something that isn't a male character, but, I can put it past it. It's fine. It is a show focused around these 2 guys, and it is stereotypical that, female characters die and men want to avenge them. But it's fine. I like it. It's still good. But yeah, her death is pretty tragic and pretty horrible to watch.
'Cause all
we
the
have
way
another blood dripping from the ceiling moment.
all the way through, when it got to the end, you were just like, something's happened to her. Is she okay? Is she cheating? Is she dead? And I was literally sat there like, I'm so sorry, this is about to happen.
Yeah, I
You're
can
about
see it
to witness
coming.
this.
I can see it
Because you
coming,
can see
but-
it coming, but you're still a little part of you's like, no, she's fine. Look, the shower is on.
Yeah.
She's fine.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of expected a guy to come out of the
Shower.
shower. I thought that would have been good.
That would have been great.
What else have I got written here? 'Cause I took some notes. Oh yeah, I know what I wanted to nitpick at. Why did they talk about the local legend of this woman in white?
Yeah.
And she's presumably been killing people for years.
Yeah.
I don't know why she suddenly becomes more active in the last few weeks, but anyway. Why did this guy not know the legend and pick her up? Like I said, there are so many red flags around this spooky lady
I
on
think
bridge.
it's because no one believes in them. So in this kind of universe,
People are idiots.
people don't know that vampires and ghouls exist. Yeah, they're
Well,
idiots.
but in our world, people don't know that ghouls and vampires exist. But like, if you saw a spooky lady on the road, you wouldn't like.
But then also, he was just driving along at night. He sees a girl that looks a bit out of it. Maybe she's been drugged. Maybe she's been roofied and she's just woken up.
Oh my god, that was not what I was thinking.
I mean, that's how I saw
Okay,
it, because
fair
she
enough.
looks a bit spaced out, doesn't she? And she's like, just
But
take me
then,
home.
so okay, in your version of events, she's been roofied, and his suggestion is, yeah, I'll just take her home and sleep with her. Like that's
I mean, I'm not saying he's a nice guy, Mike. I'm not saying he's like,
doubling
you
down on the
know,
worst stuff.
Jesus. Yeah, he could probably and is a dick. But that's not the point. The
Swore.
point is, swore. He's made his bed, literally. Now he's got to lie in it because he's dead.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, no, I, do you know, what? I had a lot of fun. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of like playful banter that sometimes doesn't land. Like I think Dean just comes across a bit of a jerk, but then it's also just like, you know, it's quite fun and light-hearted in places. I kind of want it to maybe become campier. I would be okay with it
does
being
come a bit
campier.
happy. I think you will eventually. You do grow to love Dean because you understand his motivations
Right.
behind it, and he is like the big older brother.
I mean, he's a bit one-dimensional right now.
Yeah.
Like, avenge mum,
Yeah.
help dad.
He literally is, but you see their kind of relationship grow and very much stuff come out, and it's very beautiful to watch happen. That sounds, super
I mean,
cute.
it
and
sounds like
great.
you're in love with these guys.
I
so.
actually really am. I love Jensen Ackles, who plays Dean. He is my favourite character.
Favourite.
Yeah, and then in season 3,
That was a lustful favourite.
Season 3, an angel comes in who's called Castiel, and you've always known that I've wanted to name my dog Cass. If we ever got a dog,
Yeah.
we're naming it Cass, short for Castiel. And he is
I'm going to call it Casper the Friendly
he
Dog.
is he's played by Misha Collins, and he is like so good as well. He just adds. They become this like
Okay.
trio of fit people fighting bad guys.
I mean, that actually does sound like Castlevania. They get like a trio, so the
Squad.
The squad is the Dracula's son, Alucard,
Yeah.
the woman that Trevor frees,
Oh,
who's
yeah,
like
yeah.
magic. So the three of them become like a little squad.
Squad.
Oh yeah, the other thing I just wanted to throw out, which I appreciated, because a lot of TV shows don't do this well. In the start of episode 2, there are guys playing on their DSs in the camp, and they have the clunky DS, which
clunky-
I
I
had,
had as
the
well,
silver
yeah.
one, and they're either playing the demo, which came on, or if you bought a Nintendo DS within the first few months, you got a free demo cartridge of Metroid Prime Hunters.
Wow.
And I actually had the game Metroid Prime Hunters. Very good game, had good multiplayer, and they're playing the multiplayer. They're actually playing DS Download Play, and he's playing it properly using his finger. Like, he's not using a stylus, but he's actually playing the game, or it looks like he is.
I like that you
which I
appreciate the
really
small things of
appreciate
playing
that.
games properly in films, because people don't do that.
It bugs me when they
They
show...
just pretend to. It's
just,
like
yeah,
when people
smack
pretend
the
to type.
controller.
It's like, can you seriously not just actually type something?
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
Can't you just pretend you're actually playing a game? But yeah, I want to know now. Do you think Supernatural is worth continuing? I know it's got a lot of long series, but that doesn't mean you have to watch them all. But do you think it's worth continuing?
Honestly, it's a bit dated, but other than it being a bit dated, like it's a great show actually. Like it did really capture me in the first couple of episodes, first episode in a bit. I am really interested. I want to know what happens with the dad. I could feel my feeling with the show is that I think it's really good right now. The fact that it goes on for so long doesn't fill me with confidence
Yeah, that's
because
fair
I
enough.
can definitely see it going into the drudgery of like, oh, it's another thing this week, and me stopping caring about what's happening.
I get you.
But right now, yeah, I'm pretty invested. I think it's good.
I'm actually quite impressed. I was hoping you would, but a small part of me was like, oh, I'm not sure if you will. But then, yeah.
I mean, I think I could make fun of it.
Yeah,
more.
I think,
I think
and
I
as
could-
I say, it does go a bit weird when they have the Scooby-Doo episode.
I cannot imagine that in this world
It
because
is-
right now it's quite trench coats
Yeah.
and taking things seriously.
It's because
so-
like angels can control a lot. They have one episode where this angel just wants to get Sam and Dean out of the way, so he just puts them in continuous video like game shows.
Okay.
And if they answer wrong, they're just like
Well, they're like stuck in a purgatory game show.
essentially they
Just
just have to
wicked
keep going
slave.
into game shows, and the only way to get out is just essentially to actually play them. It's
That sounds weirdly like JoJo's Bizarre
yeah,
Adventure or something.
It's so good. So what you're saying is yes. This is
Yeah,
what I'm
do you know
doing.
what? Yeah, I think it's
I'm
worth it.
impressed by that. I'm happy. We can finish watching the next one.
Yeah, I think to give my sort of concluding remarks on it,
Yeah.
I think it's a bit dated. It's a bit of its time, and I could see it potentially falling into the drudgery of a boring monster each week, and I could definitely see the rules of its universe falling down quite quickly because it struck me as they hadn't thought super hard about certain aspects of it, like
Fair.
how monsters get killed, like why they don't really. I'm hoping they explain things that I've got questions about, like why the dad didn't dig up the corpse of the lady in white and stuff like that. But I can see it being the sort of show that probably might not address that, which maybe would annoy me a bit, but I am nitpicking a bit here. I think it's fun. I think it's just like, especially if you were into shows like Primeval, Buffy, stuff like that, it's definitely...
I'm happy with that. I'm
Definitely
glad
worth
you
checking
actually
out.
enjoyed that.
Yeah. What about Castlevania then?
That's when you know what? I want to know what happens next. I think this is the first week we've actually both won.
Yeah, I think, absolutely. It's
I
great.
really enjoyed Castlevania. I didn't think I would, but I do want to know what happens next. I want to hear more of Richard Armitage.
I'm most impressed with this. This is the most surprised I've been in your response because
Yeah.
District 9, I kind of knew you would not be keen on.
No.
I think you'd find it too stressful. Misfits, I knew you'd really like. Force Unleashed, I knew you'd probably have a bit of fun, but I thought ultimately you're not that into Star Wars, so would probably give it a miss. But this, Castlevania, I did not think you would enjoy it. I thought it'd be too gory, too spooky. I thought you'd find... I mean, you're okay with animation, actually.
Yeah.
A lot of people have this weird thing where they're like, I just can't relate to people unless they're actual humans like me. They just can't possibly put themselves in the situation of a drawn person. I don't know. But yeah,
Oh, there we
liked
go.
it.
There we go, guys.
That's great. I'm happy.
Don't know what that is. I think that's like two all.
I think it's
Maybe?
3-2.
3-2. Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, we're only on episode. Oh no, yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah,
Episode 5, that adds up.
yeah.
Oh, no,
episode
that's
4. Yeah,
not-
but I think no.
Oh,
Who knows?
sorry,
Who
we'll
even
figure it
knows,
out.
guys? We'll figure it out. But anyway, both
Write
of them.
in, tell us who's right. Write in.
Both of them are worth watching. So if you do like, a little bit of horror, quite a bit of gore, apparently, I would suggest giving both of them a go because they're both interesting. They're on the way, and they do have some interesting parallels I didn't think would be there.
Yeah, also, I forgot, don't think we mentioned this, Castlevania is a Netflix original, it's on Netflix.
Yeah. Supernatural,
and
you will have to buy the box sets like we did before
yeah.
doing this.
But yeah, Castlevania, more seasons will be coming. I think there's another season coming fairly soon, so definitely something to watch if you're a fan of any animation, actually.
Exactly. So, thanks again for listening, guys. If you enjoyed, please follow us on YouTube or Spotify, or give us a great review on either of those, or Apple Podcast or Stitcher, or wherever else you may be listening to this from. And see you next week, guys, because trust me, it's worth it.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm very clever.